What's the difference between Spring and Spring Boot, Alan?
Okay, you guys hear me? Just to double check. Think okay, right? Um, yeah, so Spring is a powerful Java framework that provides a comprehensive set of features for developing enterprise-grade applications. It covers a wide range of modules and libraries, including Spring Core, Spring MVC, Spring Security, Spring Data, and more. Spring requires explicit configuration and setup to wire components and manage dependencies. Spring Boot, on the other hand, is a sub-project of the Spring framework that aims to simplify the development process by providing opinion, opinionated defaults and auto configuration. It leverages the capabilities of the Spring framework while minimizing the need for explicit configuration. Spring Boot focuses on convention over configuration and provides a streamlined approach to building standalone production grade Spring applications.
Okay. What did you understand about these questions?
But yeah, so basically, Spring is more focused in the Java framework, basically creating MVC, the security, and the data part, for example. Whereas the Spring Boot one, it focuses mostly on what Lorenzo read before, the convention and configuration part of it.
Okay. The next question is how does Spring Boot simplify the development of Java applications, Ricardo?
Spring Boot simplifies Java application development in several ways. It provides auto-configuration, where common component dependencies are automatically configured based on class path scanning and sensible defaults. Spring Boot offers a curated set of starter dependencies that include all the necessary libraries for specific functionalities, reducing the effort of managing dependencies manually. It comes with an embedded server such as Tomcat, Jetty, or Undertow, allowing developers to run applications as standalone jar files without requiring a separate web server installation. Spring Boot Actuator provides production-ready features out of the box, such as health checks, metrics, and monitoring capabilities. It offers a range of developer tools, including automatic restart, live reload, and the command line interface (CLI), enhancing productivity during the development process.
Okay. The next question is what are the various ways to create a Spring Boot application? Uh, JG, I think is your name or no?
Yep, that's right. Do you mind just give a bit of a zoom in, please? It's quite hard to read due to the Discord compression.
Okay.
No, no, I
Can
meant
you
like a zoom in.
repeat?
Yeah, perfectly. Just dip down a bit now for the fourth question, and almost so I can read it in our single row.
Yes, the four
Uh,
questions.
Thank you. Well, there are several ways to create a Spring Boot application. Using Spring Initializer. The Spring Initializer is a web-based tool that generates a project structure and initialize Spring Boot application with the desired dependencies. It allows customization of project metadata, dependencies, and the packaging options. Using Spring Boot CLI, the Spring Boot CLI command line interface allow developers to create and run Spring Boot applications directly from the command line. It provides a convenient way to prototype and develop Spring Boot applications quickly and manually create a project structure. Developers can manually create the project structure by setting up necessary directories and configuration files. They can add the required dependencies and configurations to configure the build system, for example, Maven or Gradle, to manage the dependencies.
Okay. The next question is what is the role of the Spring Boot application annotations, Lorenzo?
The Spring Boot application annotation is a convenience annotation in Spring Boot combines three essential annotations: configuration, enable auto configuration, and component scan. It is typically used to annotate the main class of a Spring Boot application. This single annotation enables auto-configuration, component scanning, and application context setup, making it a powerful shortcut for configuring Spring Boot applications. So I can add to this sentence that where is this annotation is where we start the code. Like it's like our public void static main from the Spring Boot application. So it's here that our application starts, and usually we don't add code there, but if we want, we could add some code there, but it's not used in production.
Okay. The next question is explain the concepts of auto configuration in Spring Boot. Alan.
We do it. Auto configuration in Spring Boot is a key feature that eliminates much of the manual configuration effort required when building Spring applications. It leverages class path, any, and conditional configuration to automatically configure beans and set up sensible defaults based on the dependencies present in the project. Spring Boot auto configuration works by analyzing the class path and determining which beans should be created and configured based on the available libraries and dependencies. It used the add conditional annotations to conditionally enable or disable specific configurations based on the presence or the absence of certain classes, properties, or conditions. Auto configurations provides a significant advantage in Spring Boot as it reduces the need for developers to explicitly configure every component of the application. It simplifies the development process by automatically configuring commonly used components such as data sources, GPA providers, web frameworks, security, and more based on sensible defaults and conventions. It reminds me of like people that have worked with Java in the past. We used to configure a lot of things using XML. Like probably some of you know it. And what Spring Boot does is it basically gives us a bunch of different annotations, which basically does that for us, right? We have a single application properties file in the project where you can probably configure everything you need, some of the things you need also, like you can basically add a new annotation, and it should be good to go. Like things basically work out of the box, right? It's quite helpful, being honest. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's very simple, of course.
Yeah, agree.
The next question is how does Spring Boot handle dependency management, Ricardo?
Spring, Spring Boot simplifies dependency management by providing a curated set of starter dependencies. These starter dependencies are opinionated, pre-configured dependencies that include all the necessary libraries and configurations for specific functionalities or technologies. By including a starter, developers can easily leverage the feature and capabilities provided by that technology without worrying about manually managing the dependencies. Spring Boot manages dependencies through its dependency management plugin, which ensures that all dependencies within a specific version range are compatible with each other. Developers can simply declare the starters they need and their project build configuration, i.e., G, Maven or Gradle. And Spring Boot will resolve and manage the transitive dependencies automatically.
Okay. The next question is what is the purpose of the application point properties or application point YAML file, JG?
Well, the application.properties or the application.yml file is used in Spring Boot for externalized configurations. It provides a convenient way to configure various properties of the application without modifying the source code. These properties, next page please, include database connection details, server ports, login configuration, application-specific settings, and more. The application.properties file uses a key value format, while the application.yml uses YAML and a markup language format. Both formats allow developers to specify configurations properties and their corresponding values. Spring Boot automatically loads and applies the properties defined in these files during the application startup. It provides a sensible default values, and developers can override these default by specifying the properties in the application.properties or application.yml file. Well, in a nutshell, it's just a configuration file, like Alan said before. It's better than working with XML.
Okay. The next question is how can you override the default properties in Spring Boot, Lorenzo? I can't understand you.
Sorry, was muted. To override default properties in Spring Boot, you can provide custom values in the application.properties or application.yml file. By specifying the properties in these files, Spring Boot will use the custom values instead of the default values. When defining custom properties, you need to use the same property keys as the one used in the default configuration. By setting a property with the same key in the custom configuration file, Spring Boot will override the default value with the custom value. Additionally, you can also override properties using command line arguments or environment variables. By providing a command line argument or setting an environment variable with the same key as a property, you can override the default value during an application startup. The precedent order for property resolution in Spring Boot is command line arguments or environment variables, and then application.properties or application.yml, and then default values. So what I can add to this context is that we can have more than one application.properties, and usually we use this for have three or four different environments. Like if we run the application in the cloud, if we run the application in our machine locally, we can have different application.properties, and we can configure it differently in different environments. So we can handle this different depending the the local we are running the application.
The Spring profiles, right?
Yeah.
Okay. The next question is what is the purpose of the auto-ride annotation in Spring Boot, Alan?
Um, it's not recommended to use it anymore. That's the document will probably mention it at some point, but yeah, let's just read it. The auto-wired annotation in Spring Boot is used for automatic dependency injection. It allows Spring to automatically wire and inject dependencies into a class or a bean without the need for manual configuration. By using auto-wired, you can declare a dependency within a class, and Spring will resolve and provide the appropriate instance of that dependency at runtime. It enables loose coupling and promotes the use of interfaces, making the code more maintainable and testable. The auto-wired annotation can be used with constructor injection, static injection, or field injection, depending on the preference and design of the application. When applied, Spring Boot will scan the class path for suitable dependencies and inject them accordingly. Is it still part of the same question? Not really, right? I think it's another
Uh,
one, the concept
can I,
11
can I
one.
ask you something, Alan?
Yeah, sure.
Uh, you told that the notation autowrite isn't anymore used.
Recommended, yeah.
Oh,
No, it's still
yeah.
used, but yeah, I've read a few different blog posts where developers not really recommend using it. I've seen like people mentioning that you will get coupled to the framework itself, while you can basically inject your dependencies through construction, right? You don't
Mm,
actually need the auto-wired one. Long as you
mm,
inject it through the constructor, that should work in everywhere you need, basically.
nice. I didn't know.
Yeah, you can test it. That's interesting.
But does this have like a more in-depth explanation, for example, why we should not be using auto-wired? It's not more recommended by the Spring team. For example, hey, do not use auto-wired because could make hard to test an application, or just using this annotation will look like your code is fully of hidden magic, or just a new convention that the
No,
developers
it's
using.
yeah. I would recommend you reading something because I read it like a quite long time ago. But some of the things I remember is first thing is you basically annotate something with at auto wired, so you can use it in your class. It's more complicated to inject some behavior if you're testing that. So it makes more complicated for testing as well. If you want to mock something, that's going to be a little bit more complicated than just basically passing something through the constructor. This is one of the things that people say why you shouldn't use the auto wired one.
Got it.
Yeah. The other thing I've also heard was people saying that you get too much coupled to the Spring framework. So if you ever want to migrate it from Spring to something else, so you would have to keep changing that everywhere you have an auto wired. Whereas if you have it in the constructor, it shouldn't be the case, right? So you can I wouldn't say quickly or easily switch from Spring to Quarkus, for example. But it shouldn't just, give you some errors because you're not using the auto-wired annotation anywhere. These are the two motivations I've heard before, just, testing related and also coupling, trying to be less coupled to the Spring framework.
I think the better way to implementations the injection dependencies with constructors. I think with these annotations autorated, I think is the not the better way to implementation. Okay, but with constructors or uh, yeah, with constructors, for me is the better way to, to develop these solutions.
But for
What
example,
about
you
you?
guys told about you talked about testing an application with AutoWire that got it that it's quite hard to set up the test. But for example, shouldn't we using like dependency inversion principle, like in or better saying interface segregation principle to inject via constructor, so we could use, for example, Mockito and all
Yeah,
those all and
exactly.
all the other stuff for JUnity to make unit test easily to mock.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That's the
Okay,
best
got it.
approach for sure. Yeah.
I got it. I thought when we were talking about passing via constructor, we would be passing the concrete class, not using an interface or like
Oh
an
no,
abstract class.
no, always
Nice.
interfaces. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
I also I got the opportunity to read it to read a little bit here about this thing, but it says that avoiding the auto wiring enforces the immutability because you're passing interfaces to the constructor, right? Just like you mentioned, makes it clear what dependencies a class needs. So it doesn't rely or you're not just based on the auto wiring annotation, which is specifically from Spring. It's easier to test, just like you said, with mocks and everything. New safety as well, as you're already dealing with the constructors. And it also mentioned the Lombok tool from Java, which you can use the required args constructor, which
Yes.
helps during testing as well. And that's something you would lose if you use the auto wire to keep injecting dependencies.
Yes. Okay. The next questions is uh, explain the concepts of a profile in Spring Boot, Ricardo.
Profiles in Spring Boot allow you to define different sets of configurations based on the environment or application context. A profile represents a specific configuration or behavior that can be activated selectively based on specific conditions. Profiles are useful when you want to have different configurations for different environments, such as development, testing, or production. It allows you to define property values, beans, or other components specific to a particular profile. For example, you may have a database connection configuration specific to the development profile and another configuration for the production profile. By utilizing profiles, you can easily switch between different configurations without modifying the code base, making your application more flexible and adaptable to different environments.
Okay. Did you understand?
Yeah,
What Lorenzo mentioned earlier, I thought.
Okay. The next question is how can you enable a specific profile in Spring Boot, Lorenzo?
To enable a specific profile in Spring Boot, you can set the spring.profiles.active property in the spring.properties or in the application.properties or application.yml file. You can specify the active profiles as comma separated list. For example, to activate the development profile, you can set spring.profiles.active equals to development in the configuration file. If you want to activate multiple profiles, separate them with commas like spring.profiles.active equals to development and production. Additionally, you can also set the active profiles using command line arguments or environment variables. For example, you can use the spring.profiles.active equals development command line arguments or set the Spring Profiles active environment variable to to activate the development profile. Spring Boot will then load the corresponding configuration properties and bins specific to the active profiles during application startup. So this is a thing very used when we are developing because like I developed with three or four ba- three or four different databases. So sometimes I need to switch the database. So I switch with the active profile, and when it's in production, it's a completely different profile. So it's a thing very used for developers, and uh, we don't usually change these profiles. Once it's created, we use them just switching between the options, and that's the way I use these profiles.
Okay. Uh, Next questions. How does Spring Boot support the creations of RESTful web service? JG.
Well, Spring Boot provides a comprehensive support for building RESTful web services. It integrates the Spring MVC framework, which is widely used for building web applications, and simplifies the process of creating RESTful APIs. To create a RESTful web service in Spring Boot, you can follow in these steps. The first one, annotate the controller class with @REST_controller to indicate that would handle RESTful requests and automatically serialize response as JSON or XML. The second one, use at request mapping or other specialized annotation like at get mapping, at post mapping, etc. To map HTTP requests to specific control methods. Third step, define the necessary request parameters, path variables, and headers using annotations like add request parent, add path variables, and add request header, and etc. The fourth, return the appropriate HTTP response using response entity, add response body, or specify response related annotations. And finally, optionally handling exceptions using the add exception handler to provide custom handler error handling and appropriate HTTP response for exceptional cases. Spring Boot offers features like content negotiation, request validations, input conversion, and automatic documentation generation through libraries like Spring HOS, Spring Fox, Swagger, which further enhances the development of RESTful web services. Well, it's just in a nutshell explaining how we can configure a controller and how we can deal with input and expose of data about the RESTful APIs. Not that in deep, let's say.
Okay. The next question is what is Spring Data JPA and